Sabres are looking to bounce back. It does not get any easier. Here comes Winnipeg, and we got an injury that's going to be really meaningful and a scratch that's going to be meaningful. Coming up on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, and thanks for making the Locked On Sabres podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. That includes our YouTube channel, where you can watch the show there. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. It's a game night. The Sabres are back in action at home again, the second of this 5-game homestand, this time against the Winnipeg Jets. The Sabres seeing the Jets, of course, for the first time this season. And do we hope that they are going to bounce back from what we saw on Tuesday. They can't do worse. Sneaky Joe DiBiase, you can check us out on our Locked On Sabres text club. Join subtext.com/LockedOnSabres, where you might have got a lot of these updates already, line combinations, although that we didn't really get today. More about injury updates today. There's a big one to Rasmus Dahlin that we have to talk about. A big, healthy scratch for tonight that I think is overdue. And there's a conversation to be had about a certain individual by the name of Jack Quinn that we'll have to have in the next couple of weeks or so that we've already kind of been having. And this is a team that is slowing down a little bit. Winnipeg has slowed down a bit from a historic start to the year. So maybe a good time to get the Jets. They are on a 4-game losing streak at the moment, losing to St. Louis on Tuesday at home. And that's after this team started the year 15-1. They started 8-0. They lost a game to Toronto in the middle there, and then they went on another 7-game winning streak. So an 8-game winning streak and a 7-game winning streak in their first 16. And since then, they've only won 3 of 10 since then. So the Jets have fallen off a bit. And, we'll talk a little bit more about what they've got for tonight's lineup and whatnot, but that was predictable. Right? Like, to some extent. Like, I think Winnipeg's a good team, and they have a phenomenal goaltender that's going to lead Team USA at the Four Nations Cup in the spring, and then probably at the Olympics next year if he could hold off Jake Ottinger for that job. Connor Hellebuck is one of the best goaltenders in the world. And he has started that way this year. The Jets roster is always kind of the same, though. It's Scheifele, it's Nikolai Ehlers, it's Josh Morrissey. It's not Blake Wheeler, I guess, anymore, but there's so many, Adam Lowry, so many guys just they're always there. They remind me a lot, honestly, of the Vanek, Pominville, Miller Buffalo Sabres, where they got a bunch of guys that are all pretty good, and they've got their best player as a goaltender. Hellebuck's probably a little better than Miller was. And that combination's pretty good. Like, they make the playoffs once in a while. But nobody ever thinks they're ever going to do anything once they get there. So the Jets kind of remind me of the Vanek, Pominville, Miller Sabres, if you will. Just never really the big swings, the big action. But still a great start overall. I mean, to look at them at 18-8, I mean, they would have taken that 100 times out of 100. And they're probably hoping they're going to destroy the Sabres today. So we'll talk about tonight's game. We'll talk about Rasmus Dahlin's injury and the impact that we have there and what that could mean for some other defensemen. And the blue line in general, because the blue line kind of went like the second Dahlin leaves it. All that coming up on today's show. I want to start, though, just with the Sabres just trying to bounce back. And, yesterday's show, rightfully so, they earned this. It was pretty dark and depressing. But it deserved to be. I got one text question from a listener this morning. This is where we've been at. He asked me, and I think he was serious, are we going to lose the team? Now, that was in response to I had sent on our group chat a picture of the tickets for tonight's game. It's a Thursday night against Winnipeg at home. And this is 1 week, by the way, after the Thanksgiving Eve game last week was like the hottest ticket in town. You know, they were on the winning streak. Tickets were, pretty expensive. I was trying to go to that game. We were out of them at work. They went up. The tickets that we get at WGR were gone. People wanted them. 1 week later, the cheapest get-in price for Sabres and Jets tonight is $8. That's before fees, but $8. We're in the single digits again. That's a tank. That's a tank team stat right there. And some of that, by the way, is probably weather related. There's been a lot of snow in the area, and it's supposed to continue into today. So driving downtown in the snow, I'm sure, is also a point of emphasis there, or is a factor. But man, where are we at? That quickly, 2 nights after? I mean, I called it a franchise devastating loss. One of their worst losses I've ever seen, and fans are reacting that way. So anyways, long story short, the question the texter asked was, are we going to lose the team in response to that? And I answered with it is honestly, I'm not lying. That's a thought I have once in a while. I really do. Once in a while, I have the thought, I wonder if this team is going to be here forever, the way this is all going. The financial stability of the team. How much they probably hemorrhage money? I don't know that. Maybe I can't imagine they're making anything though. But I always come back to it. I told the listener this. I always come to the same conclusion, which is I might have that thought, but it's a resounding no. I don't. They're not going to lose the team. I think especially, there are probably a million other reasons why they wouldn't, but number one on my list for that is I don't think Gary Bettman, as long as he's commissioner, would ever let this team leave here. And I hate Gary Bettman. I hate what he's done to the sport. I hate that he's robbed us of a decade of international hockey, but I trust him. I trust Gary Bettman that if it ever became a question, which it's not, that Gary Bettman would not let them leave. He did that 20 years ago. He owned the team, right? The league owned the team. There was ownership that wanted to move them to Portland, reportedly, or rumored to be. And Bettman, I think, probably had a lot to do with the team staying here. And he's still commissioner. So as long as he's commissioner, I don't think they're going anywhere. And again, that's reason number 10, maybe why. But it's something I don't blame anybody for wondering it or thinking it. It's bad. Everything's bad. Everything is bad. Or at least it seems that way. Bouncing back, though, listen, you want to get fans out of that mode. You want to get them out of that dark, depressing place. You want to climb out of that hole. Then, man, you got to get some results. This next couple of games is going to be critical to see. Are they still going to have a season? Are they still going to be pushing for the playoffs? Or is it all going to come crumbling down? Because I wonder if that could happen if they just break. And Tuesday was the dam bursting. And that mentally, because they're winning games this year, not a lot on their high-flying talent and skill and scoring. They're doing it on hard work. They're doing it on being defensively responsible. I think they have matured their games a little bit. Not all the way, clearly, because of Tuesday. And if all of that gets broken, then you don't have the talent to back you up, to dig out of that. So that's where I wonder how bad it could get. And that's where bouncing back tonight will be huge. Gaining confidence for their own group, giving confidence to the fans. Huge game, I think, tonight. Or the mood is just going to get worse and worse and worse. But just give fans any sort of positivity is necessary. Especially, listen, they're on a homestand. Boos will get loud. No doubt. Chants, maybe. Last year, around this time, in fact, was it about 1 year ago? I meant to bring this game up anyway. About a year ago, it was December 13th last year, so a little less than a year ago. Sabre fans chanted to fire Granato. Not many of them, some of them chanted to fire Granato in a game where they lost 9-4 to the Columbus Blue Jackets of all teams. That's going to happen this homestand if they don't get it together. If they go on a losing streak here, it'll be Fire Adams. There will be Fire Adams chance. At least I'd be surprised if there weren't. By the way, that game I did want to mention. Just trying to think positively here at all. Bouncing back in this game. Last season, the worst loss of the year. I don't even think it's debatable. The worst loss of last season. The most embarrassing result of the whole year was that 9-4 game against Columbus. They lost 9-4 at home to a bad Blue Jackets team. You might say, oh, this is a positive spin? I'm getting there. What did they do the very next game? How did they respond last season to their most embarrassing loss of the year? They came out and they smoked the Maple Leafs 9-3. A good Leafs team. They destroyed Toronto the next game they played 2 nights later. So, in that way, all right, I've seen this group, or what is most of this group, get embarrassed like they just did this past Tuesday, and then come out the next game and look like the best team in the world. So, fingers crossed, holding out hope. I'm trying my best here to make you feel good about tonight's game. Last year, their most embarrassing result of the year was followed by their best game of the year. So maybe they'll react the same way. One thing that they won't have, though, that they did have in that 9-3 game is their best defenseman. Rasmus Dahlin, we got to talk about the impact of not having him and what's going on with his injury. We'll get to that when we come back as we start looking through Sabres and Jets here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. We're going to get to my sneaky parlay a little bit later on. When we do that, all those odds courtesy of FanDuel, and they got a lot of them. Anytime goal scorer bets, you want to bet on a guy to score more than 2 points, shots on goal, a lot available for, anything. You could bet on. One thing I will tell you, I won't tell you which side I bet, but you could bet on if you think the Sabres will score a goal in the first period, if you think they'll come out hot. And of course, it's football too. You got to get ready for the final stretch of the NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you are watching the game and you get a hunch, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and plenty more on the same page where you place your bets. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com to join today. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. By the way, tonight, Sabres and Jets at KeyBank Center. If you're watching the show on YouTube, you see our beautiful black and red background, and that's because the Sabres will be wearing the goat heads tonight. Black and red is back, which means they can't lose, right? Because they always win in black and red. Most times. The big thing to get to for tonight's game. No Rasmus Dahlin. He got injured on Tuesday, took a funny hit in the corner. He was kind of in on the play, and he kind of took like a side hit. It twisted weird, and bam, back spasms. And what Lindy Ruff said is that is connected to his preseason injury, which to me makes sense because he has not played the same as a typical Rasmus Dahlin has this year. And back injuries are lethal in hockey. There's so much balance. And when you have a back injury, I just think that really can affect you in a huge way. So he's out. And I guess you might even say you didn't get much of a positive timeline from Lindy Ruff this morning, despite the fact we didn't get an actual timeline. Lindy said that he hopes it's short term. That's not like, it's short term. He won't be out long. Like, there was none of that. It was, I hope it's short term. Like, it was not a positive sounding update to me at all. Like, it sounds like it could be multiple games, a week, maybe more than that. Like, I think it's tough for Lindy to know, too, because back spasms, that might be an unpredictable injury. That's not, he's got a sprained ankle. We know that takes 2 to 3 weeks because most sprained ankles act the same way. That's not, wrist injury where we know we got to do a little minor procedure and that takes, a week to come back from. That's not, back injuries, maybe he wakes up tomorrow and is fine, or maybe it's bothering him for months. Very tough to predict, I think, the type of injury that Dahlin has right now. And with him out, that's tough, because even though he was, I think, it seemed like maybe he was playing at like 80, 90% as of late, and maybe it was closer to like 50, 60% at the beginning of the year. It's glaring what happens to their blue line the second he goes out. Because while they have a great top three, it could get thin pretty quick. So when we look at a projected lineup for tonight, the Sabres did not do line rushes in practice. We don't know these officially. These are me mostly taking an educated guess. If you want to keep a number one pair together, which I'm guessing Lindy will do, then okay, my top pair is set. I'm good. I love a top pair of Owen Power and Bo Byram. Perfectly fine with that. Like, I think that could give you similar results, almost maybe even the same results that you had been getting from Dahlin and Byram together. So, okay, love that. Love Power and Byram. But when you bump Power up, look how thin the bottom four gets that quickly. Because suddenly, Jacob Bryson and Henry Jokiharju, I've just put down as my second pair. And I've liked Bryson this year, although he has not played as well in the last week or so. If he's got to be the best defenseman on your second pair, like, give me a break. And Jokiharju has not played well, I don't think, all year. And then Dennis Gilbert and Connor Clifton, like, you just got third pair physical defensemen that aren't very good puck movers. Bryson, Jokiharju, Gilbert, and Clifton, to me, is a bottom four that is really lacking the ability to move the puck up and down the ice. Gilbert is going in tonight. If Dahlin misses another game, I would put Ryan Johnson in. The Sabres recalled Ryan Johnson from Rochester, and if it were me, he would be the guy going in, because Connor Clifton is your physical, steady, stay-at-home defenseman. You might not even call him steady, just physical, stay-at-home defenseman. How about that? Jokiharju is not really that great a puck mover. And Bryson is a puck mover, but he's not super dynamic. So, I think the guy you want is a guy that's Dahlin ultralight. And Ryan Johnson is more of an offensive-minded defenseman, a good passer, sees the ice well. To me, Johnson over Gilbert would be the one. You want to put Gilbert in, fine, but take Clifton out. I think Johnson maybe should get in the next couple of games. The other impact of not having Rasmus Dahlin is the power play. So Dahlin, who had been quarterbacking that number one unit, of course, all year, he leaves. And at practice, it was Owen Power that was bumped up to power play unit number one. And he is who I'm locked in on tonight, because I think Power now suddenly becomes the Sabres' number one defenseman at 5-on-5. He's probably going to play 24, 25, 26 minutes tonight. And he's going to get the power play minutes. He is going to the number one power play unit. And why I'm locked in on Power, he's been great at even strength this year. He's been, I don't know where he stands right now. He's been top 5 all year in even strength points. 15 on the year in 25 games. He has 0 power play points. Nothing. And you might ask, well, how much has he played on the power play? He's on the number 2 unit. That's right. But on the number 2 unit, you still play some. He's played 50 minutes and 1 second of ice time this year on the power play. 50 minutes and 1 second of time that he's been on the ice for a power play. And he has no power play points. 0 in 50 minutes. And that's got to be better. And tonight, he gets that opportunity to get that first point. In fact, the Sabres have only scored 1 goal in those 50 minutes that he's been out there. It's not like, who was 3 passes before that. He got things set up and then they scored. No, 1 goal in 50 minutes. That would be 1 for 25 on an average power play percentage. So Power getting some production on the power play. They're on a drought in that department too. So him going up to that top unit, if he ever wants to be a big, big point producer in the league, he's going to have to put a power play production. You're not going to be a 70, 80-point defenseman just in even strength points. It's impossible to do that. And he's got the even strength stuff down right now, so just need to get some stuff going down on the man advantage. No Dahlin tonight is huge. You might have noticed when I just put those lines up on our YouTube channel, no Jack Quinn. Jack Quinn expected to be a healthy scratch tonight. And that means that Tyson Kozak is expected to make his NHL debut. Gritty, bottom six guy, probably not going to do almost anything offensively for you. In 3 seasons, for context, in 3 seasons with the Amerks, Tyson Kozak has 15 goals. So you're not getting offense. You're not getting anything offensively from Tyson Kozak. He's going to be a bottom six grinder. And you might say, whoa, I don't like that. The Sabres can't score goals. I'm taking a quote-unquote scorer off the ice for a guy that scored 15 goals in 3 years for the Amerks. I would say, I hear you, but Jack Quinn hasn't beat a goaltender yet this year. And he deserves to sit. It's long overdue. Maybe he doesn't deserve to sit for Tyson Kozak, but he deserves to sit. No doubt about it. Jack Quinn has got to get it together and give him every wake-up call that he needs. Let him sit in the press box because starting to teeter on a Ville Leino level season. Leino, in his last year with the Sabres, scored 0 goals in 58 games. Didn't beat a goalie all year. Jack Quinn is on game number 24, and he hasn't beat a goalie yet this year. All right, so he's not even halfway to what Leino did, but just saying, come on. It's about time. We're more than a quarter of the way through the year. You have not beat a goalie yet. He deserves to sit in this game, no doubt. I thought he was starting to turn around. I loved him in Anaheim last week. I liked him in San Jose. And then I think in the last couple of games, it's just gone right back to what it had been before that, where he's not producing chances. When he does get chances, he's shooting it right into the gut of the goaltender. He's not even really testing them. I don't know what happened to him. We'll do a deeper dive on Quinn. We've done it with Cousins. We've done it with others. We'll do a deeper dive with Quinn because I also want to get into with him. It's the injury excuse is getting used for him this year a lot, but the comparison to last year is what I really want to do because last year he got injured. Last year he was playing through the injuries and he had 9 goals in the same amount of games. What happened? Last year he had the injury excuse built in and it didn't matter. He scored 9. This year, 1, and it was an empty netter. So Quinn coming out for Kozak. Godspeed to the Sabres with this lineup. Scoring goals, though, on Connor Hellebuck. We'll see. Stranger things have happened. I'm not very optimistic, though. When we come back, I've got my parlay for this game, and we'll look at what Winnipeg's got going on lineup-wise for tonight. Coming up on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Welcome back. Locked On Sabres podcast, wrapping things up here on a Thursday as we look ahead to the Sabres and the Jets at KeyBank Center. Winnipeg's lineup for tonight. No Nikolai Ehlers. Nikolai Ehlers has an injury. He has been a very good player for them for a long time. We've had trade discussions about him dating back probably 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. He's still there, but he is day-to-day, and he is not expected to play in this one. So Sabres get a little bit of a break there. If you look at their lineup, some of the names to watch, other than the typical guys, your Scheifele's, your Josh Morrissey's, who's really developed into a great top pair defenseman after a little bit of a slower start to his career. Kyle Connor makes Team USA. I want to talk about Tage on our next show, by the way. Don't worry, I got a rant brewing, but I'm going to save that for tomorrow. Kyle Connor, 13 goals. He is over a point a game on the year. He's tremendous. Really always has been. It's really the same cast and crew in their top 5. Their point leaders go Connor, Scheifele, Ehlers, Morrissey, Pionk. All those guys have been around. Gabe Vilardi starting to poke his head in there a little bit. The young player that I'm wondering if he'll ever really jump off the page for Winnipeg is Cole Perfetti, who was a first-round pick, top 10 pick a few years ago of Winnipeg's, and kind of a slow start last year. He started to get going a little bit as a third line guy that would produce some offense for him. This year it's going okay. 17 points, 26 games, 6 goals. He is somebody to watch in tonight's game, and he'll be on that second line with Brad Lambert and Vladislav Nemestikov is what you're looking at for Winnipeg. Brad Lambert, by the way, if you're wondering, this is only his second game of the year tonight, assuming he plays. He was doing line rushes, but Brad Lambert was a debated prospect in the 2022 NHL draft. I remember the Sabres he was someone that everyone thought was going to go in like the mid to high first round, and then he fell all the way to 30. And he just is. That was his first NHL game or second NHL game? Second NHL game that he played on Tuesday night. So you got a young kid, 20 years old, that is going to be getting his second taste of action of this season tonight on their second line. So that's what you're looking at for Winnipeg. My parlay for tonight's game, looking to hit on the sneaky parlay. We'll start with what the odds are. The Sabres are an underdog at home. No surprise there. Winnipeg minus 144 in the money line. The Sabres are plus 120. The over-under lowered to 5.5 for this game. Minus 115 on the over, minus 105 on the under. So, my parlay, I am going to go after that over-under. I'm going to go under 5.5 goals for this game. I think the Sabres against Connor Hellebuck could really be ugly. I think it could be a shutout again. I think you could see I wouldn't predict a shutout. Maybe like a 2-goal performance from the Sabres, but I think it's probably most likely. But I can't see them putting up a lot on Hellebuck. And I expect Luukkonen to bounce back from a really bad third period, I thought, the other night, after really trying to keep the Sabres in it. I would next go over half a goal for the Sabres in the first period. So this is a weird parlay together, but I'm predicting the Sabres will come out hot, that they are going to play like they just got embarrassed in front of the entire hockey world. And they're going to be adrenaline. They're going to come right out. They're going to dominate Winnipeg in the first period, and they're going to get one. The reason I'm combining those two is, though, I don't think it's going to last. I think they're going to play great in the first period, if you had me guess, and then I think they'll probably cool off in the second and third, maybe similar to what we just saw in Colorado. Hopefully they can hold the lead this time if that does happen. And then I'm going to go Sabres plus 1.5 on the puck line. Keep the game close. Keep the game close. Low-scoring affair between the two. Maybe like a 3-2 game in favor of Winnipeg, maybe 3-2 in favor of the Sabres. So that's what I got. Not a long shot today. Plus 398 is what you're getting on the odds there. So they'd be 10 to win 39. Under 5.5 total goals. Over a half a goal for the Sabres in the first period. And the Sabres to cover the plus 1.5 puck line. So to lose by 1 or win the game outright. That's your parlay for today. That is going to do it for today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in today. Check out our sister shows, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, or you can check out Locked On Bills with Joe Marino. We'll talk to you tomorrow, hoping, please let it be after a Sabres win. Hoping to get that. Talk to you tomorrow here in the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.